Unfortunately for students at Heaton Public School, arson has become a familiar term. Earlier this week, a blaze ripped through 11 of its classrooms, marking the school's second suspicious fire in just under a month. The incident has prompted calls for additional security measures at schools, a suggestion which has so far only managed to extract the promise of a review.
One can always say that there could be more, but then the police or the fire department would say it wouldn't matter if you put more. If they really want to do damage, some people will do damage.
But the Education Department says it can assure students temporary classrooms to get them through to the end of the year, a gesture offered by nearby Jesmond High.
They set aside 5 rooms up in the high school that the students can indeed use. They've commenced using those today.
An inquiry has been launched into the blaze, with detectives investigating links to other school fires in the Hunter region. Meanwhile, demountable classrooms will be operational for students in time for the new school term early next year. Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
More years than I can count and that I know of, but yeah, it's a great day and everyone looks forward to it.
HSC students at 16 high schools throughout the Hunter and Mid-North Coast were told yesterday that their exam papers had been lost. Scone Grammar School student Ursula Ledgerwood received a phone call from her principal.
He said, "Oh, you better take a seat for this one, Ursula," and then sat down and he said, "Oh, they've lost your papers." And I thought he meant all of them at first, and he said, "Just the physics one's been misplaced."
Brett Gardner from Scone High School heard the news by accident.
No, I actually found out by listening to the radio, and I heard it come across the radio. And that was the first I actually knew anything of it.
303 papers belonging to 278 students were lost somewhere between the schools and the Homebush Marking Centre. The Board of Studies has refused to reveal the schools affected, but NBN News has learnt that Scone High School and Scone Grammar, Singleton and Muswellbrook High, St Joseph's Aberdeen and Port Macquarie High are all involved. Principals like Patrick Ruin are still in a state of disbelief.
It's happened, and we've got to just get on with it now and make sure people aren't disadvantaged and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Representatives of the Board of Studies are tonight staging meetings in all the areas affected. They'll attempt to explain to students and teachers exactly what went wrong. Affected students will be given an average mark based on their assessments throughout the year, many hoping their university entrance mark won't be affected.
It would be devastating because you just think, oh, I might have had those marks, but they don't know if you did or not.
It's such a simple thing to do. All they had to do was take a couple of papers from one place and take them to another place. And I mean, how hard is it to do that?
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The torching of Heaton Primary School is tragically becoming a trend, not an exception. Last year alone, arson and vandalism at schools drained a massive $21 million from the state government's coffers. Shadow Education Minister Patricia Forsyth, herself a former teacher, says action is needed in the form of a statewide review of school security.
I believe that every school has to be assessed for the needs of each school. Different schools will have different priorities, but schools that are in isolated settings, schools that are surrounded by bushland, these are the sort of things we need to get down on paper.
According to the Shadow Minister, security at schools has been pared back over the past 5 years.
Talking to school principals and to security firms, they've said to me that the contracts that are available now for school security firms require response time on average of about 25 minutes. It used to be 15 minutes.
And with school holidays around the corner, the situation could get worse.
At the end of next week, we're about to see 2,500 schools across New South Wales vacant for 6 weeks. In the wake of what we've seen this week, inevitably there's going to be some copycat type of offences.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Only one person from each state was selected for the 3-day Talented Drivers program at the Australian Institute of Sport, and from New South Wales it was Stuart McColl. Lessons in race psychology, physiology and nutrition were served up in an effort to turn promising drivers into great drivers.
Oh, it definitely helped me become a better racing driver. I'll be able to sort of hop in the car and not have too many problems driving around without sort of getting too puffed out and sort of go out there and win some races.
McColl was also one of 2 racers to receive a $4,500 sponsorship from insurer Marsh. It capped off a solid year for the 20-year-old Formula 4 driver, which also included a high-profile 3rd place at the Australian Grand Prix and 2 race wins in the National Championship. Next year he'll be driving for a new Melbourne-based team and is full of confidence.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of testing in the new car and we're putting some reasonably quick times and the car feels great and I'm looking forward to doing really well next year.
Where do you want to end up at the end of it all? In the close-fought world of 49er racing, every second counts, and today Chris Nicholson was making sure his boat was ship-shape for the start of competition on Sunday. Watched by his dog Moses, the champion sailor, and his teammate Daniel Phillips will almost need to perform some aquatic miracles of their own to beat rival Adam Beashall to a berth in the Olympics.
We're pretty keen and we're looking forward to it, and that usually goes a long way to helping the result.
Less than ideal performances in the first 2 Olympic qualifiers sees the 3-time world title holder needing a win and Beashall to finish 10th or worse to make the games. But preparations for the regatta have gone well, and Nicholson's cause could be helped by the large number of overseas sailors taking part.
I think we'll probably only have 5 or 6 Australians and 30 or so other countries, and just the training regattas that we've had have been really tough. So. But that's good. We need a lot of fast guys, so hopefully we can get some points in between us.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
brings you back to earth, knowing that you can't just laze around out there in the first team, that there's other people pushing for your position as well, so it makes you work harder.
The well-documented win by the Australian Davis Cup team has prompted us to take another look at our sporting achievements in the last 12 months. With all our Olympic athletes in the pursuit of excellence in the 2000 Games, it seems to have subconsciously rubbed off on all the non-Olympic sports and has really created a culture of success and raised our perception of what success is. And in contrast to that, there's South Sydney. The Rabbitohs will now have to wait until early next year for another day in court after losing their battle for an interim injunction to start next year's NRL competition. The club, true to character, will forge on, but the players and coaching staff will now look elsewhere to secure their futures. Even if South are successful with their legal challenge, the best that they can really hope for is to start in 2001, and I think that's a real injustice. Every team cycles between success and failure. It's not right for rugby league's most successful and traditional club to simply miss out because of the NRL's 1999 facts and figures criteria. Well, anyway, that's it for me. I'll be back next year, so I'd like now to take the opportunity to wish you all a very safe and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Millennium.
On a day when Hunter Health enjoyed the community support for its future plans, the problems of the present became patently obvious. John Hunter, Maitland, Belmont and the Mater hospitals were all full, unable to cope with the numbers of patients turning up. At the Mater hospital, patients were kept in ambulances while they waited for beds. But the head of Hunter Health says today's hospital overload is not a sign that resources across the region are being stretched to their limit.
This periodically does happen. It's unusual it happens at all our hospitals at once, and today's been an extraordinary day in that regard.
Area Health Boss Professor McGrath says staff are still working to solve the situation, but she says the future is more promising. 10,000 people have offered their views on the direction of Hunter Health, and 90% have approved of a plan which includes replacing Newcastle Hospital with a polyclinic, rebuilding the Mater, expanding Belmont District Hospital and improving facilities at John Hunter Hospital. The major capital works could take 7 years, but the Hunter Health CEO says the community support will help the plan gain approval from both the board and the state government.
Ideally, I'd like to see us included, first stages included in the 2000-2001 Forward Capital Program.
These holes, drilled in 3 trees at Redhead, were just big enough to load them with poison, and the attack almost went unnoticed. The member for Charlestown, Richard Face, says only time will tell if the trees will survive. But it's already too late for some of Redhead's native flora, which has been cut down piece by piece.
And I can only assume that they're doing it to try to open up a line of sight to get a view.
Richard Face describes it as an assault on a fragile environment and says it's only residents that can stop it.
They're not doing themselves a favour by taking the old Australian adage, I'm not going to dob my mate in. They're nobody's mate, the people that are doing this sort of thing.
While it may not be the Davis Cup, these players are proving that they could become the next big names in the world of tennis.
I guess it's more of a lead-up tournament for players in the junior age groups because it leads into next year's national titles for them, and for the open players and the adults it leads into the satellites and open tournament season for next year.
But no titles are on the line in this tournament. There is, however, more than $6,000 prize money up for grabs, which has attracted some well-known aces to the courts.
Top state-ranked players and nationally ranked players in the juniors. In the adults we have players who have either world rankings or have had world rankings in the past, so there's quite a bit of depth in the field.
So it would seem that Gosford appeals to both the up-and-comers in the tennis world, as well as the more experienced players.
The second of a 3-week series, they aim to qualify for a Masters event in this Championships, which is held next week. And from there, as I said, it's just practice under the belt for the big tournaments ahead in the summer season.
Adam Harper, NBN News. A strange orange glow surrounding a floating disc is what eyewitnesses are claiming they saw late last night. And once it was reported to the authorities, it had to be seen to be believed.
And I saw a bright orange light in the sky, and it seemed to hover over there, and I'd never seen anything like it before. It definitely wasn't a plane or a helicopter or any balloon type thing that I've ever seen before, and I I thought it was a UFO.
It's alleged that 2 discs were seen last night, one at 10:15 and another at 11:15, both in the same section of sky over the entrance.
Well, it was an object and it was flying and it was unidentified, so it had no navigation lights, no sound, totally silent. Yeah, so yeah, a UFO in my opinion.
The sightings seem to have changed many people's opinions on visitors from outer space.
Now, you were a non-believer before as well.
I sure was, yes, and now I believe now.
Although nothing has yet been confirmed about the sightings, many are still sceptical, refusing to believe. Adam Harper, NBN News.
There was only the shell left of this hardy plank house today after fire ripped through it last night. 4 fire crews rushed to the Gardeners Road house at around 1:30. It took fire crews 2.5 hours to extinguish the blaze, but despite all their efforts, a car and a motorbike from a neighbouring property were also damaged.
Police Scientific was called in when the fire was put out, and reason being the fire is suspicious.
Meanwhile, 2 occupants of this Clara Street home in Mayfield East had to be taken to hospital, suffering smoke inhalation after fire broke out in their front bedroom.
The occupants put the fire out prior to the fire brigade's arrival, and we merely did smoke ventilation and made sure that the building was made safe.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
"48 workers at Long Air Docks' Argenton factory and 7 at its Rathmines operation have been told they won't have a job after Christmas. The company is best known for its involvement in major local projects like building the Mine Hunter moulds for ADI and constructing the Kooragang coal loader. But it seems business of late hasn't been good.
A downturn in the coal industry, that's our primary customer base. A reduction in capital spending at those mines and cost-cutting measures that impact on all the suppliers into that industry.
The company's plants at Rathmines and in Sydney will close, while the Argenton workforce will be heavily reduced. Today, workers, upset with the redundancy offer made to them, voted to strike for 48 hours.
Membership have decided to take a 48-hour stoppage in terms of trying to advance the package. The company only has 2 weeks for every year of service on the table at this point. The membership are not happy about it.
They want 4 weeks' pay for every year of service and will continue the fight later this week. Paul Lobb, NBN News. This is all that's left of 3 unoccupied townhouses in Yarra Way at Burrigal. Police say they were set alight around 4 o'clock this morning.
I've ruled out electricity and other things that may have caused the fire, so we've only come back now to an arson.
The Department of Housing had inspected the dwellings just last week and had planned to refurbish the 3 that were destroyed and to demolish the adjoining 3. Now all 6 will go. Locals say despite the presence of security guards, there's been at least 6 attempts to torch the unused building.
I'm a bit worried, sort of, like our house could be next door, neighbours, and all these houses joined together. One place go up and they'll all go up.
Number 2's been up a couple of times. Number 10, that one. It's been a few.
But it's not just empty townhouses that are torched in this suburb. This car was set alight just a couple of 100 metres away around the same time that the flats were on fire. The waiting list for non-urgent public housing in Lake Macquarie stands at 4 years. Attacks like today's make it even harder to provide shelter for those who need it most. In the meantime, life in Yarra Way goes on.
Fires, gunshots, fireworks, all that sort of stuff.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It shows that the Australian public do care about the soldiers that are over there, and they're not going to be forgotten.
"20 Central Coast hopefuls gathered at the Leagues Club in Gosford today, all hoping to be one of the lucky 12 chosen for the upcoming season.
There's 12 from Sydney and there'll be 12 from Central Coast. That's my exact figures, but I'll be using a squad of 18, and I know I'd like to have 8 to 10 extra girls so I can select the best for the day.
Half the squad has already been chosen in Sydney, maintaining the team's 50-50 Sydney and Central Coast mix of talent.
Emphasise their dancing ability in front of a crowd, and altogether it comes into one big celebration for one team.
And while training from now on will be held in Sydney, the first performance will be held at Graham Park.
It is quite demanding. I'm quite strict. You know, I expect a lot from the girls with their dedication and with their performances, so it's not a slap-happy routine.
Adam Harper, NBN News. A relatively new addition to the competitive side of surfing, this expression-style session is attracting large numbers. The aim is to perform difficult manoeuvres at a critical time in the wave, even spending some time off the wave. Trevor Gleave picked up the biggest air and $500 for his effort, whilst Dylan Longbottom won the most radical air. Meanwhile, on the calmer waters at Gosford, some fellow water lovers were making waves of their own in the 4th day of the Gosford series.
So it's a spill, sort of push yourself to the limit, and if you come off you lose.
16 boats were entered today, each pulling 2 skiers across choppy waters in a bid to boost their point score tally. But the Speed Demons say while competing for points is a major incentive, so too is the pure enjoyment of skiing.
Bit of wood, really. That's about all they get. They only just get a trophy. There's no prize money in this sport. You just do it for the love of it.
The comforts of her Newcastle surgery will be left behind in a fortnight when Dr Beckett joins fellow GPs on a mercy mission to East Timor. Volunteering their time, the health experts will venture into villages hit hard by the recent crisis.
I'm expecting malnutrition, dehydration in children. I'm expecting worm infestations. I'm expecting malnutrition in adults as well.
The plight of the East Timorese has touched Dr Beckett, who says young children are dying for lack of cheap remedies that any Australian can buy at the local chemist. She's appealing for people to help out with supplies such as rehydration salts, bandages and antiseptic creams. Hunter Health today started the ball rolling. She'll be relying on her basic knowledge to treat patients.
Because there won't be any facilities for actually diagnosing anything, there won't be pathology as we have here, so it's going to be basic clinical stuff, examinations, and I presume there'll be an interpreter for some history taking.
Dr Beckett will perform a dual role, both treating patients as well as setting up a basic healthcare facility for local doctors to build on.
There's no point in going in, doing so-called miracles, pulling out again and leaving nothing behind.
Anyone wanting to donate medical supplies can drop them off at her clinic in Donald Street, Hamilton. Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
first thing this morning, and they said, look, just go ahead and get it repaired.
And these meteorite fragments.
They're not the same as the roof tile, as you can see. It's certainly a different covering. It may be a fairly similar texture inside.
Through the timber lining, spraying pieces across the lounge room, leaving a gaping hole. Paul believes it was lying there watching TV just minutes earlier.
Your start.